This is summertime pie season, and we've been making slab pies, which there's another recipe. I'll show you exactly how to do that. And we've been also making our galette, which is a rustic pie. It's the easiest pie to make. Ooh, they get a little sloppy. You can make it with savory or sweet, and everybody wants to eat the rest of this for breakfast. And so I have to do a video quick so they can all devour it. But let's go make this together. I'll show you how to make the pie crust, how to fill it, and then you can choose what you want to put in yours. So let's go bake together. My secret weapon for making the best pie dough, honestly, it is foolproof, is to use a food processor. And here's a little trick. If you have not used a food processor before, the first thing that you need to do is actually click the base of it in place. And typically you start off to the right and then you like swing it over and it clicks into place. Then do not forget to put the blade in. Oh my, I have done it before, got all the ingredients in there and realized the blade was not in. You cannot get the blade in once the ingredients are in. You have to dump everything out, start over. So click the base in, get your blade in, and then we start adding the flour. And it's 3 cups of flour. I like to hold my hand over the top of the blade where it slides down onto the post, because at least on my food processor, when I don't hold it over there, I feel like flour gets down in there. But that's just on mine. You check yours out. So add your flour in, then you're gonna do a teaspoon of salt. Do not forget the salt. Without salt, the pie crust is flavorless. I've accidentally done that before too. Oops, forgot the salt, and crazy how much 1 teaspoon of salt helps give it so much flavor. Then what we're going to do is, especially when I'm doing a sweet pie, is we add in the sugar, and it's just a tablespoon of sugar. It's not a whole lot, but it helps the pie crust to have just a little hint of sweetness. We don't want it to be uber sweet because the pie filling is very sweet. Then click on your top. Your food processor will not turn on if your top is not clicked on. So these are all tips. If you've not used a food processor before, that's the way to get it to work, is click the bottom, get your blade in there, put your ingredients, click the top on. And I like to run it maybe for 30 seconds just to get the salt, sugar, and flour all incorporated. Then here comes the butter. And for this recipe, you're gonna do 3/4 a cup of butter. And here in America, that is 1.5 sticks or 12 tablespoons. And what I do is I cut it in half, the stick in half, and then I cut it in half again, and then I cut it into little chunks. You don't want your butter to be warm and soft. You want it to be really firm and hard, but it's easier for the food processor to get that butter cut into the flour if you don't put just one huge chunk in. So make sure that you cut it up into smaller pieces. This is where the food processor makes making pie dough so easy, because it is going to cut the butter into this flour way easier, much faster than if I was trying to do it by hand. Now you can, of course, do it by hand, get a pastry blender, you can do it, but food processor, honestly, I've never had a batch of pie dough not turn out when we use the food processor. Then the other thing is, I've also tried to do a pure butter pie crust, and just a little bit of Crisco or shortening goes a long way. And so there's actually 6 tablespoons of shortening in this recipe. It's mostly butter, just a little bit of shortening, but it really does make it flakier. It changes the texture of the pie dough. Now, if you have found a recipe or a way to sub out the shortening, put a comment below. I would be happy to try it. I just always compare it back to this most amazing, never fails pie crust recipe. The full recipe is down in the description below, and it's actually on our blog as well. So if you click over onto the blog, you can print the whole thing out. Makes it a little bit easier to follow the recipe while we're baking together. So click on over to the blog. You can cook with me and bake with me once you've printed out the recipe. Once you have all the butter and the shortening in, you're going to click your top back on. And for this part, you don't want to walk away from the food processor, because the goal is really that we just get that butter and shortening cut into the flour. So I like to stand and actually watch it. It doesn't take very long, and I'll put it on low and allow that flour, Crisco, and butter to get, it's essentially cutting the butter and shortening into the flour. And I just run the food processor, and this is going real time. This is exactly how long I do it. I do it until the flour starts to look just a little bit like it's sticking to the side. See how when I shake it, it kind of just stays up on the side? That's what it looks like. It doesn't look super wet at this point because we haven't added the water, but that butter and that shortening are now cut into the flour, which is perfect. You don't want to have huge chunks of butter or shortening in the flour, because when you go to roll out the pie dough, if there's a big chunk of butter, it melts really weird, and it will actually make your pie crust have like holes in it. Now we have our 1/2 cup of cold water, and I just slowly drizzle it in while the food processor is running. You're just going to slowly add it in until the dough comes together. And it always takes a 1/2 cup. Every once in a while, I have to add like maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon more to get it to come together. See how I added just that last little bit? You're gonna run your food processor until the dough is all clumped together on one side. You don't wanna keep going once it all gets clumped together, because what it will do is it will actually start to melt that butter. And we don't want the butter completely melted through there. We want it to look like this, where it's all in one chunk over to one side. And I let this run. This is real time. How long it took me, it only takes maybe 20 to 30 seconds at the most. Then you can't skip this step, okay? You have to chill your pie dough. So here's what I do. If I know we are going to want to make pie at some point this week, it's kind of like when I do sourdough, is I just get the pie dough ready ahead of time. If I have time on Monday or Tuesday, I'll make it then. Wednesday, whenever. You can make it ahead of time. It can rest in your fridge for days upon days. You can also freeze the pie dough. So this recipe is actually going to make enough for one large slab pie, which is a double crust, plus a mini galette, or it makes enough for 2 double crust 9-inch or 8-inch pies. So all this to say, this is making a lot of pie dough. You may think, oh my goodness, I only really want 1 shell because I'm gonna make strawberry pie. Great, make the entire recipe and then freeze chunks of it, and you'll be able to just pull it out of your freezer and make pie so easy. And let me tell you, this pie crust is way better than any store-bought pie crust. It honestly, store-bought pie crust just doesn't even compare to it, but you need to chill it. Okay, that's the moral of this story. You can't skip this step. So make it ahead of time, get it ready so that you can make an easy pie the day that you want to have it, because pie really does taste the best if it's made fresh the day you're going to enjoy it. Now, sometimes when I take the dough out of the food processor, there's a few parts that are like still a little bit crumbly or just a little dusty. It's okay for you to work with it and get it to all like stick together. You're not gonna mess your pie dough up at this point by working with it, because you're not adding more flour in. When people say don't overwork your pie crust, what is happening usually is that people are putting too much flour down on their work surface. And so then their pie crust is getting more and more flour incorporated into it as they work with it, which ends up making your pie crust tough. Right now, it's not a problem for us to work with it and make sure that it's all incorporated together. You can wrap up the portions of the pie dough in whichever way you want. I knew I was going to make a big slab pie as well as a galette or a rustic pie the next day. So I just did all of the pie dough together. But if you know you're going to do your rustic pies, you're going to do smaller ones, then I suggest wrapping up the pie dough so that it is in like 4 chunks. Then you can pull out just what you want to use when you're ready to bake. Now, the day that you're going to make your rustic pie, you want to make sure that your pie dough gets to chill for at least an hour. I like to make it ahead of time and it gets to sit in the fridge, or I even put it in the freezer, and then I can just pull out what I want whenever I'm ready to bake. But let's say that you made the pie dough today. Now it is resting in the fridge, and while it's resting in the fridge, you can get all of the filling ready to go. Now I pulled these plums out of the freezer. That's why they look a little bit like crystallized, and they're pretty firm when I'm chopping them. If you are going to do a plum or a peach, you don't need to take the skin off. The skin cooks up really well, but you want to get the pit out and you want to slice it in about 1/4 of an inch slice. If you are going to do an apple or pears, you do want to take the skin off. The skin on the apples and pears just does not cook up very soft, and you'll be so bummed. You'll go to like take a bite of your galette and you'll have this like hard, chewy skin in there. So make sure you take the skin off if you're using the apples or pears. I'm mixing up plums with blueberries. And here's the thing about galettes. They cook better and set up better if they are not overloaded with the filling, because there's no top to hold it in there. So you really want kind of one layer of filling. It can be mounded slightly, but you don't want to go too crazy. Now, it doesn't need a lot of salt. I just do like a few cracks. I think I did 3 cracks of salt for this. We're doing just a little bit of cornstarch. You need to have the cornstarch in there because even though we're not doing a big, huge filling, we do want to ensure that all the juice that comes out of the fruit, it sets up. Now, I like the galettes to be more on the tart side, not uber sweet. So I only did 1/4 cup of sugar. You can choose how sweet you want yours. You might have fruit that is just so ripe and delicious. It doesn't need very much sugar, but you want to get all of that mixed together. Your fruit, salt, cornstarch, and sugar, get it mixed up and let it rest, because you want the juices to start to meld together so that that cornstarch gets incorporated. Our slab pie recipe, I do have it on the blog, but it's actually one of the ones that is from our cookbook. And our cookbook is filled with menus to help you fill your table with goodness, with gathering, and to inspire you that you can use your table, your kitchen, all of the goodness of everyday life to help fight trafficking. And the cookbook tells you more about that. There's a link below if you want to check it out. Now our pie dough has been chilling, and actually what I end up doing, I let it chill for an hour, and then if it has already had that hour of chilling time in the fridge, I actually let it sit out while I'm getting the filling prepped so that the pie dough, it's this like happy medium that you're wanting. You want it to still be very cold, but you want to make sure that you can still roll it out. If it's too freezing cold, you're not going to be able to roll it out. So if you can squish it in your hands like this, and you can squish it out into a rustic ball, you're ready to go. Make sure that there's a lot of flour on your work surface, because you don't want your pie dough to stick to the work surface, and you don't want the pie dough to stick to your rolling pin. So the whole time that I'm working with it, I'm shaping it to a certain extent. It's gonna be rustic, but I want it to be in an oval shape, but I'm also moving it because I want to ensure that it's not sticking to the counter. If it sticks to the counter, it ends up ripping, and that's when people get into the whole trouble of overworking their pie dough because it rips and they're trying to fix it. So as you can see, this pie dough is easy to pick up, move around, work with it, but you do want to ensure that you have flour on it. If it's starting to stick to your rolling pin or your counter, put some more flour on it. Once you have it rolled out to the point that it is about 1/4 of an inch thick, that's when we're ready to make our galette. So here you go. You can see I can pick it up. It is very flexible, it's soft, and it is going to bake up to be the flakiest, most delicious galette. So it's all ready. It's a very rustic shape. That's one of the reasons why I love these pies, because they're rustic. So I'm gonna grab a large baking sheet and parchment paper, because before we fill this, we want to move it and put it on our baking sheet with the parchment paper. If you try to fill it and then move it, you're gonna have a very floppy mess. So I like to use my rolling pin. I just roll the dough over it, and then that gets to be what my tool essentially to move the pie dough. Now that it's on the baking sheet, now we can put our filling in. And remember, you don't want the filling to be heaped up and too much of the middle, because it will be so sloppy, and essentially what ends up happening is that your ratios are off. You'll have way too much filling to pie dough, and you want there to be equal amounts of delicious filling to the pie dough. So when I put the filling in, I am going to push it out, because I don't want it to go hanging over the edges. We want to leave about 1 inch to 2 inches of pie dough as a border around it, because that's what we're going to fold up. That's what's going to hold all of this goodness inside. Because everybody's going to see the fruit, I like to just kind of arrange it so that it's not going to look perfect, because it's going to cook down, but I want it to be sitting in there so that it looks nice, because that is going to be the top of your pie. We're not going to put any pie crust on top. This is why they're so easy to make. So our filling is there, and now we're gonna work our way around by gently folding the pie crust up on the sides. As you fold it up, you're going to layer it where it kind of folds on top of each other as you go around. Because this is a circle, it's not gonna be just a straight line. That's what gives us that little rustic kind of ruffle of an edge. This is why the galette or the rustic pie is so much easier than one in a pie pan, because you don't have to do any pinching or crimping. It is not supposed to look perfect, but you do want those edges, you want it to be a seam in the sense that like they're not cracked, there's not gaps in between, because that's gonna hold all of that goodness inside the pie as it cooks. Then before we put it into the oven, this is the secret to getting the most golden, beautiful crust. You are going to whisk together 1 egg with 1 tablespoon of cream. You are going to whip it until it is like a watery consistency, no chunks of egg white, no chunks of egg yolk. You don't want to have straight egg white or egg yolk brushed onto your crust, because it will make it this kind of funky color. So get it really, really whisked together. Then you're gonna work your way around with your pastry brush, brushing a really nice even layer all the way around the crust. If you don't use an egg wash, your pie dough will actually begin to burn before it gets golden. It's so strange. It has a really hard time getting golden all on its own. So this is the secret. And these are my absolute favorite pastry brushes. The whole thing is one piece. There's no weird cracks or spots where like food can get stuck in it, and you can put it straight into the dishwasher. So all of the tools that I love to use, down in the description below, just click the link. You'll actually be able to print out the recipe as well from our blog, and you can get a link to all of the tools that we're using. Once you have coated all of the crust with that egg wash, I actually like to do just a small little dusting of raw sugar on the crust. If you are doing a savory version of this pie, then you can actually dust the crust with just a little tiny bit of flake salt. But for the sweet pies, I do just a very small amount of raw sugar. It's maybe a teaspoon, but it just gives it a little bit of sparkle and a little tiny hint of sweetness as you take a bite. Now we're gonna bake our galette at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes. If your galette is bigger, you can cook longer. You ready to see the beauty? Oh my,
Now you know why everybody was wanting to gobble it up before I got a video. It is so delicious. But now here comes the hard part. It does need to cool in order for it to begin to set up. Now, I don't always do a little glaze drizzle, but I had some left over from when I made the slab pie. And so this is 1 cup of powdered sugar with just a couple tablespoons of half and half mixed in to make it this nice, thin, drizzly glaze. And it really does make the galette so beautiful.
It's so good even for breakfast. The trick to storing your pie is don't cover it, especially with plastic wrap, because it traps all the moisture in there and it makes your pie crust get a little bit soggy. So usually what I do is I'll just like put a piece of parchment over it or like put another baking sheet upside down on top, and that's how I will store it if there's any left over.
Now we're all going to enjoy the rest of this one, but if you want to make a savory one, you can do that too. Click over onto the blog. You can actually print the recipe and bake along with me. And we're so glad that you're here in the kitchen enjoying life with us. This is the joy of living, that we can fill our table not just with good food, but with so much goodness and memories together. So we're glad you're here. Cheers and have the best time baking.